All right, so we are here today with Dr. Wade Fuqua of the Chenal Family Therapy in Little Rock. So Wade and I actually know each other from UCA, from the Honors College at UCA. We actually traveled the globe together about 16 years ago. So.
Yeah, stop in Amsterdam, Tanzania.
Zanzibar.
There you go, yeah.
The island off of Tanzania, Zanzibar. Yeah. So yeah, you come from right here at UCA. So how did you get into therapy? How does your story in therapy kind of go?
So after UCA, I found a family therapy program a friend of mine turned me on to in Monroe, Louisiana, which is like really just kind of barely across the border, right? Just really northern South Arkansas. And so spent some time there, came back to Little Rock and started working in kind of a school-based health center, and then started doing outpatient a few years ago.
So yeah, we spoke with, earlier in the year, we spoke with Dr. Teresa Hudson, and so, she's a therapist and kind of a clinical physician. So what is family therapy, and how does family therapy kind of differ from the other types of therapy we might be more familiar with? Yeah,
it's different, probably in a few different ways. I mean, a lot of mental health clinicians practice family therapy. They'll work with the whole family. I think the difference of a licensed marriage and family therapist is that our focus is on the presenting problem. We'll treat, anxiety, depression, things more serious, but also in the context of the family. So how does the issue or the person struggling, how does that relate to the whole family, to get influence from one another, and seeing treatment be more sustainable, because it's not just one person flying solo trying to deal with it, but everyone working together.
Right, absolutely. So, I think, like I said, I think your specialty kind of very much applies to what we're hearing about this month from our farmers. And so we're everybody's either gearing up for or returning from family vacations, right? And so we've been with them for 6 months at this point, and hot, dry summer, the work has been unbearable. And so we hear often it's impossible for me to take a vacation, right? The time off never really comes. Not only for somebody running a small business, but particularly a small family farm. So, do you deal with this a lot of overwork? In the world of mental health, what does this look like for us?
Yeah, and I'm sure it's always been there for farmers, I would imagine, right? Because you can't go on vacation and not tend to your farm. Right. But I think we've seen it in other disciplines where it's probably more talked about, and so it's easier for them to deal with because it's more talked about. I think it's harder for a population like this to not, because it's not talked about, it's not as understood. And so, when you're overworked, you see burnout. I think you have a loss of hope that it's going to get better, which is one of the biggest challenges of burnout, is that you don't see the end to this. There's no end in sight. And then when the end comes, it's like, oh, well, shoot, what do I do now? And so that's really challenging, but stress is huge in those times, goes up. Tension in family is, really high.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember back in college, I would get stressed out in a semester, particularly finals week, and then there was that release. Finals are over, and I'm either on Christmas vacation or I'm on summer vacation. And you spend a week and a half there going, I don't know what to do with myself. That's a very interesting mental situation you find yourself in. So, like I said, we just came out of September, maybe the hardest working month for most farmers, because we're heavy into harvest, and we're heavy into moving cattle and herds off to market. So not only have we kind of seen physically this is demanding, but mentally and emotionally it's relentless. And so kind of coming back to this relentlessness, what does that do to a person mentally?
I think over time it adds up.
Right.
Absolutely. And you see it, I know, like trouble sleeping,
right.
Too much or too little, appetite changes. I think irritability, just changing, your fuse being a little bit shorter and snapping on things that you would not normally do. Those to me are signs of you're not taking sustainable breaks. You're not really focused on sustainability for you as a person. You're just go. And understandably, you have to be.
Right.
So it's a conundrum, I think, because how do you take care of yourself when you don't know how you can make time for that?
Right.
So you have to kind of think really, really small on what that looks like. And I think some of the folks y'all interviewed have said it doesn't take much, right? Sitting down, having a cup of coffee, spending time with a friend, a conversation. Like, it can be short things to help with that. But if not tending to it, right, it over time, it becomes something much bigger that's harder to manage.
Right. So, I mean, we work here at Arkansas PBS, and even at home, I have conversations with my loved ones of when I'm getting swallowed up by work, they might bring it to my attention that it's reflecting at home. So let's say you have a farm family that maybe comes into your clinic, and maybe wife and kids or husband and kids are saying, you're so worried about, you're so focused on the task at hand, you are starting to snap at us a little bit. How, as a therapist, what might you be looking at to help there?
Yeah, that's so hard. I mean, I think even anyone's guilty of their kids being like, "Hey, like, you're snapping." I mean, like, mine does that to me too, right. and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I need to be a little more attentive to them." The biggest thing that I think can be helpful is engaging them on why it's important for you to take a break and know. So as opposed to, like, I understand the, like, "Hey, don't snap at me," but also, "Hey, that just a reminder, did you take a break today? Have you done something like that?" So engaging your family and why it's important and what your strategies are to deal with that, I think is helpful. It makes it more sustainable because, again, you're all working together around the one problem as opposed to someone just trying to keep it all to bottled themselves. Right. Yeah, bottled up inside, and ultimately that's just going to explode.
Right. So if I'm looking at, like I said, we've got farmers that, some of them are taking a vacation by following the cattle to Dodge City for sale. And then we've got some farmers going to Aruba and they're going to lay on the beach for a week, which I'm jealous of that.
Yeah, sounds like great.
In a vacation, even if it's that mini vacation of a cup of coffee on the front porch, what should I be looking for? To protect my mental health, to protect myself. I'm one of those people, if I went and laid on a beach, I would still be a nervous wreck. Like, I'm not good at that. So what should I be looking for in a healthy vacation?
Probably a few different qualities. One, I don't think it's about how much money you spend on it. I don't think it's about how far you physically get away from home. Some of the best times can just be at home and, kind of pushing things out. So I think it's a level of disconnection. We are so connected, technology-wise, communication, social media, news media, everything. There's just so much going on right now that's something we saw, particularly early on in the pandemic, of shut that stuff off. If you don't, it will just constantly be going. So I think disconnection is really helpful. You can do that really well on the beach, right? Obviously, especially if you don't have a cell signal in international places. But then, in your car, not having your device, listening to a book or music or something like that, disconnecting with a lot of intentionality.
Right.
A little strategy that I find to be helpful and a lot of clients enjoy is using the do not disturb function on our devices, right? So kind of using the technology that we have, use it for our advantage. So as opposed to having just all of this stuff coming in, limit it. There can be fear of, I still need to be connected to probably a couple of really important things.
Right.
And I think that makes sense. We can handle that if we know it's channeled.
Right.
So, do not disturb, but having, your spouse or your boss on there or something like that that's really critical. So that way you can kind of cut down a little bit, but know you're still engaged if needed.
Right. So, it sounds like even if I feel like I need to take a vacation from work, the work of the farm or the work at the TV station, it sounds like what's really healthy is to kind of take a break from not only work, but also that myriad of other things that I'm always plugged into. Because I might even consider social media or television as that relief during the work week. Whereas you're saying a vacation might mean even taking a break from those crutches, those kind of.
Yeah. I think they can be.
Right.
The problem is you can't control, when I think about things like social media, sitting down watching TV, you can't control what always is going to come on there. So it may be that you've got your kind of algorithm tuned to be really, really relaxing.
Right.
And something happens and all of a sudden now you get a lot of other stuff on there and it's no longer relaxing.
Right.
So taking a break from that, I think, can help manage that. We don't realize, I honestly think we don't realize how little time we spend not doing anything, right? Just sitting there and just experiencing ourselves.
Right.
That's really hard. We always got to have the TV on. We always got to have something playing, something going. And sometimes we need to just do nothing, and that's it. And vacation is doing something typically.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. No, we have one farm family, like I said, the ones that went to the Dodge City, and they spoke openly about, like, we can't do we are not people who do the I'm going to go be a vegetable for a week. You know, they said we go ride horses, we go climb mountains, and that's still there.
Yeah. So I think the other thing that is helpful when you're looking at vacation for the purposes of, like, kind of decompressing and getting away and not just having, because you got to go on a family trip every year, is fun and play.
Right.
When we look at burnout, which is something we see a lot in mental health and some of these other disciplines where it's more talked about probably, is have some fun and connect with people, not these things that I've already mentioned, right? But riding horses, going and doing stuff, visiting a place you wanted to, that to me is really healthy because you're going to hopefully be engaged in doing that as opposed to stuff back home.
Right, absolutely. No, I mean, you kind of bring up engaging with the people that we care about. We have another farmer who's actually, since starting our journey with him, he's taken a full-time job somewhere else. He's scaled back his farming. It's been a very interesting year for him, but I think he has a son who's just turned 11 or 12, and of course summer vacation has come to an end, and this farmer is, Larry is just now, he's kind of stepping away from and he kind of says, man, since the pandemic, I've been really into this farm. And he says, and now my son's suddenly 10, and we haven't been canoeing in 3 or 4. He said, I just kind of have that realization that it's been 3 years since we took a canoe trip. I mean, do we see things like this kind of in that family therapy environment? I mean, is that a common...
Yeah, I think so much changed over the last 2 years that, and I, coming up here, I said, like, it feels like life's kind of gotten back to normal.
Right.
And I think we realized, oh my gosh, like, so many things haven't happened, and slowly they've added back. But realizing that our relationships at home, whether they be with our children, our spouses, our neighbors, our parents, however you want to look at it, like those have to be cultivated and tended to, or they will they will just kind of I don't know, they'll wither, they'll suffer.
Yeah.
And you'll see, I'll see couples come into marriage therapy and they'll struggle to be connected. They don't spend much time together. They talk about being roommates kind of as that feeling. And to me, we need to get them connected again. So giving them experiences to communicate together is really helpful because they brought together for a reason, right? And they probably have a lot of things in common. Typically, life gets in the way. Yeah. Whether that be work or kids.
So, I mean, if I am a father or if I am a husband that life's gotten in the way and I've lost connection with these people, are there any practices? Are there anything, is there any homework you might give that person to go home and...
So probably individually, there's some really important things of, challenging a person. I don't have any time, I can't take any time. And usually I kind of push that a little bit, like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour a week. You can find that collectively. I almost guarantee it. It may be slim and you may have to schedule it, but finding a small time for yourself. And that's where I say that engaging the family of, I think couples do well when they work together knowing, hey, he needs to go, for me, I need to go run at the morning or in the end of the day. And if I don't, I'm just like, horrible. And so my wife is very supportive in making sure that I get to do that. And for her, it's, going out and spending time with her friends or something like that. And hey, let me hang out with the kids. So engaging together and understanding that it's an individual activity, but it supports the collective kind of goal of the family. Then I think a fun one with kids you mentioned is giving them a time of yes. So this isn't a novel idea on my end. Shonda Rhimes writes about it in a book that she wrote. I think it's called The Year of Yes. But she talks about, just saying yes to her kids, playing the games you don't want to play, that you're always annoyed about. Like, I don't want to get on the floor and play Pretty Pretty Princess. But I guarantee you're going to laugh when you do it. Right. And that laughter is way better than any medication you could take to deal with how you're feeling right then. Right. It just really cuts through all of the stress.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, yeah, we've talked a lot about kind of the older families. Maybe they've got 2 or 3 kids. You know, you and I are millennials. We're that younger group. And something I have seen with our age group in the last 3 or 4 years is this 60 to 70 hour work week and kind of wearing this thing like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Now, I love my work, right? And I work very hard. I don't think I take pride in this, you know, whenever I have to give one of these weeks, I do kind of see that as, man, that's a loss. But I know a lot of people who, I worked 70 hours last week. And that's, I mean, what do you think as a therapist, as a mental health person, you know?
Wild.
Yeah.
It's wild. I think, I agree with you. I think that there's a trend of like, I'm working more, productivity is, my worth is measured through that. And I think that's definitely not true. Just a blanket statement, not true. And oftentimes we work more and we're not doing as good of a job because we're stretching ourselves so thin. You know, I think of just trying to fill your plate up and you it's just rolling over. You cannot carry your plate because you're just making a mess everywhere. And I think that realizing that you can do a lot of things and you can do several things really, really well. The more you add on there, the less you're going to be able to attend to those. And so it's really counterintuitive. I think that the less you focus on, there's this concept of essentialism, of like focusing on less stuff. I can do really well with that. I can focus on that. And you have to be then intentional about weeding out things that are not crucial, mission critical at the moment. Because you're going to have so much coming your way, right? Everything's broken. Everything's horrible. What can you fix right now? Is really, really important in that.
So, I mean, let's say I'm somebody who's worked one of these really hard. You know, I haven't taken time for myself. I hate to kind of say, like, what's worst case scenario? Like, I'm not taking many vacations. I haven't been on vacation in 2 or 3 years. What's going to happen to me? You know what?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a range of things. There are some people who probably they just wouldn't notice it, right? They're just going to keep on, and that may be healthy. I don't know, but I think what I commonly see and what my colleagues see is folks kind of they hit a wall, and at that point in time, a relationship kind of breaks down, and that's what brings them in. Of, oh my gosh, you know, my marriage is suffering, or I'm having this issue with my kid. I see that a lot in kind of traditional family therapy of where, you know, kids will struggle because they're not having connection. And so you come in and realize just the family's all really struggling and they're not connected. But I mean, burnout, that can be, you know, going to work, hating your job, making mistakes, all those kinds of things can add up and be signs that, you know, you haven't been taking care of yourself. And then physically, right, we know now, I'm not a medical doctor, right, but our bodies understand, carry our stress, and so we get injuries and get sick,
right,
and so that catches up with us and can be a sign, and it can be a sign that we're not really aware of being attached to stress.
I think that's, you know, I definitely think that's a new school mentality. I mean, I definitely had grandparents that my stress is up here, but my work and productivity is down here, and so those two things aren't related, and so I don't need to worry about this as long as this is still working. So,
but the connection now that we know between the brain and the body and our guts is, I mean, it's huge, and so yeah, absolutely, that's one that we see is our bodies start to kind of, they put up barriers for us when we will not.
Yeah, when we're pushing too hard. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, how would I go? You know, if I'm sitting here listening to this and going, man, this I'm not connected to my wife, or I'm not connected to my kids. What do I need to do to kind of get the ball rolling?
I think there's a lot of great resources online now. You know, teletherapy is a huge option that it breaks down barriers for access for remote areas. I know we have about, you know, almost 20 offices throughout the state, and there's places we don't have where we're seeing people via telehealth. That now that's helpful, so that way they can feel connection. But on top of that, I think there's other resources in the state too, and also just some general, like, slowing down, talking about what's going on. I mean, I think that a lot of the things that y'all have talked about so far in the podcast has been, as I've listened to it, like, yeah, like it's very stimulating conversation to realize, hey, is this going on with me? You know?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
well, thanks so much for joining us. I mean, if you have any final thoughts to share with us, maybe about Chenal family therapy or anything, go for it.
Yeah, I was thinking about kind of what's helpful these days, and I'm seeing a little more of a transition back to in office for people, but teletherapy, I know you'd mentioned a little bit about that, is it's not going anywhere.
Right.
And the amount of confidentiality that it brings, where you can stop if you're even uncomfortable talking to your family about it, right? Like you can sit in your car and have session, go outside and have privacy, as well as not having to go to the one clinic that's in town.
Right.
And that's a huge concern for a lot of people still.
Yeah.
So
no, I think Dr. Hudson mentioned that in her interview of like they had spoke with somebody and he was just like, I'm glad I can do teletherapy so nobody sees my truck parked.
Yes.
In the parking lot of the, because there's still, especially in these rural communities and these older farmers, there's still a great deal of stigma around seeking mental health assistance. COVID was a terrible thing. It was a terrible thing that swept the country, swept the world. But yeah, I think telehealth and our ability to speak to and care for each other without being in the same room has been a benefit of.
It has, I think, especially like for individual, but then for couple, one thing that I've seen has been really awesome is, they don't want to pay for a babysitter. They can't go during the day when their kids are at school. So when do you do couple therapy? You can't. Well, after they go to bed, now you can find providers that have later hours and you can have a teletherapy session. You can both be there so you don't have to worry about things like added costs because of babysitters or just not making it work. So there's some unique situations like that too that are not necessarily immediately obvious where it is possible to make things work.
So, I mean, however an individual or a couple or a family might need to access therapy, there's almost somebody in the state who can meet that need.
Absolutely, for sure.
Awesome. Well, that's good to hear. And, man, all of this was good to hear.
Well,
I appreciate you sitting down with us today, and keep up the good work.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been fun.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Visit arpbs.org for more stories and content like this from Arkansas PBS.